Hello friends, today we are going to study about the structure of heart. Heart can be defined as a pump that is pumping and driving the cardiovascular system. It pumps oxygen, nutrients through blood in the entire body to all the tissues. Actually, it is a hollow organ which is muscular in nature, made up of cardiac muscles. It is approximately of the size of a fist, clenched fist, and it is about beating 100,000 times per day, and it pumps around 8,000 liters of blood. If we look at the location of heart, it is located in a very protected manner, in the sense that if you can see in the diagram, it is having a absolute protection from all the sides in the form of a rib cage. These ribs are arranged in such a way that the second and the fifth intercostals is the region in between the heart lies. It is slightly obliquely oriented and it is placed on the left side of the body. Besides ribs, there are lungs that are properly cushioning the heart from all the sides. This cushioning provides further protection to the heart. If you look at the heart from the top view, as you can see in the diagram, you can see that the heart is probably protected from all sides. I am sure, my dear friends, you must have seen an X-ray of a chest. If you look at the X-ray, the dark portion that is seen are the lungs, as you can see in the X-ray which I am showing just now, and the lighter portion which you can see on the left side is the location of heart. Heart on its own is covered by a protective covering called as the pericardium. Imagine a balloon being punched with a fist. So, you can understand that the balloon will have its outer covering as well as its inner covering with an air pocket in between. The pericardium, which is protecting the heart, it is called as a protective covering of the heart, is somewhat like that. As you can see in the diagram, a pericardium can be divided into the outer fibrous pericardium and the inner serous pericardium. The serous pericardium can further be subdivided into parietal and visceral pericardium. The parietal and the visceral layers are the innermost layers, and in between the fibrous and the serous pericardium is the pericardial fluid. Now, this pericardial fluid is the one that is protecting the heart from absorption of shock, jerks, etc. Now, if you jump, for example, or if you meet with an accident, but the heart is absolutely protected. So, we can understand that the heart is actually a very protected organ right inside our body. Slightly towards the left side it is located. Outermost protection is of the ribs, followed by cushioning of the lungs, and innermost structure is the pericardial membrane that is immediately encircling the heart. Next, we talk about the heart wall. Now, heart wall is actually consisting of three layers: the epicardium, the myocardium, and the endocardium. The epicardial layer is comparatively thinner, smoother, and is the outermost layer of heart. As you can see in the diagram, that the epicardial layer followed by the myocardium is the thickest. Myo, the name itself suggests, means muscles. Myocardium is the thickest layer and it is made up of the cardiac muscle fibers. Now, cardiac muscle fibers are contractile in nature and they are the functioning structures present in the heart. Endocardium is the innermost smooth layer of muscles. These smooth layers are forming the lining of the heart chambers. As it is evident in the diagram that the cardiac muscles, which forms the middle layer, are consisting of striated muscles. At this point, it is important to understand what is the difference between the ordinary voluntary muscles which are striated and the cardiac muscles. Both are having striations, that is right, but there is slight difference in the sense that the cardiac muscle fibers are multinucleated and having actin and myosin filaments. This is a character similar to the striated muscles, that is the skeletal muscles, but there are special cell-cell contacts. There are desmosomes. As you can see in the diagram, the desmosomes hold the cardiac muscle fibers together. There are gap junctions. Then there are the interconnecting bridges or the units. They are seen in the diagram clearly. If you see a cross section of the muscle fiber of cardiac tissue, you will be able to see these cross connections. The beauty and the speciality of these cross connections is that they are able to coordinate all the cardiac muscle fibers to beat together as a single unit. We have to keep that in mind when we are studying about the heart, that all the muscle fibers of the heart have to beat together. So, only then the heart can function as a contractile pump, as we have been studying. Talking about the cardiac cells, there are actually two types of cells. 99% of the tissue is made up of the contractile cells, but 1% is also made up of the conducting cells. The contractile cells, cardiac muscle fibers, I talked about just now, which you have seen in the diagram. The conducting system, now as you can see in the diagram, is slightly different. It is made up of nodes and the internodal pathways. We will talk about that separately in the latter part of my presentation. The nodes and the internodal pathway consist of the SA node, the AV node and the fibers. They are responsible for sending messages to the cardiac muscle fibers so that all of them can coordinately contract at the same time. First, the muscles contract in the auricle region, that is the upper portion of the heart, followed by the lower portion. Now, just now I mentioned auricle. What is an auricle? So, let us see what are the features of heart. Heart essentially consists of two auricles and two ventricles, that is, a mammalian heart is a 4-chambered heart. Here there is a question that any student might think of: are the heart 4-chambered in all the organisms? The answer is no. Only the mammals have got a 4-chambered heart. Yes, even the birds do have. Reptiles have got a 3-chambered heart, except for few exceptions. Fishes have got a 2-chambered heart, whereas the amphibians, that is frog, as you have studied, have got 3-chambered heart. The lower organisms, the invertebrates, also have a heart, but that is of a much simpler type. There they function just for contracting and pumping the blood. My dear friends, will you believe that a cockroach has got a 13-chambered heart? Okay, but it is like a straight tube. It is not as complicated and beautified as it is seen in case of mammals. Let us come back to mammals now. Heart is a 4-chambered structure consisting of 2 auricles and 2 ventricles. Auricle is also called as atrium. So, if you read in some books, auricle might be referred as atrium. So, I want to clarify over here that it means one and the same. Auricle or the atria are thin walled structures. We need to understand why they are thin walled. The reason is because they are passively collecting blood that comes in from different parts of the body as well as from the lungs. They are moderately expandable. They are consisting of moderately expandable tissue. There is a right auricle and a left auricle that is separated by the interauricular or the interatrial septum, and they are connected to the ventricle by the auriculo-ventricular valves or the atrioventricular valves. Now, here what needs to be understood is the right auricle is connected with the right ventricle, the left auricle is connected with the left ventricle, and both these valves are called as the AV valves or the atrioventricular valves. Now, as you can see in the diagram, that auricles are thin walled, all right, but the ventricles are comparatively much thicker structures. Here you can see that the left ventricle is having a much thicker wall as compared to the right ventricle. The left ventricle is comparatively circular and linear in shape, whereas the right ventricle is more like a pouch in shape. The right ventricle wall is comparatively thinner, whereas the left ventricle is slightly rounded and much thicker. Let us look at the structure of heart in its totality. As you can see in the diagram, that the right auricle and the right ventricle are connected through the auriculo-ventricular valve. Now, these valves are having thin strands called as the chordae tendrinae attached towards their inner side. This attachment is such that they are connected with the trabeculae cornae, which are located at the floor of the ventricular muscles. The function of these chordae tendrinae is that it will prevent opening of the AV valves on the opposite side, that is, it prevents the backflow of blood. Now, here one point needs to be understood is why backflow of blood from ventricle into auricle needs to be prevented? Well, the answer is that if such a case happens, it is an abnormality. It is called as cardiac murmur, and a doctor can immediately judge any such heart problems with the help of its stethoscope. So, it is important to understand that the valves are equally important as the cardiac tissue. During a heart attack, the cardiac tissue is affected, but even there are congenital problems which will be affecting the heart valves. Congenital means they are the problems at birth. Coming back to the structure of heart, if you can see in the diagram that both the left and the right ventricles are having these chordae tendrae that prevent the backflow of blood. Besides that, there are huge column like projections of muscles that are there at the base of the ventricular wall. These muscles are called as the columnae cornae. Columnae because they are tall column like muscles, and they are all contributing towards powerful contraction of the ventricle. Here the point that needs to be understood is that ventricular contraction is the one that will be pumping the blood into the entire body. The right ventricle receives impure blood or the deoxygenated blood, whereas the left ventricle receives the pure or the oxygenated blood. More about that will be covered in the second chapter when we are discussing about the function of heart. Till now, we have studied the structure of heart in that we have seen the structure of the auricles, the ventricles, the covering, etc. Now, we go into the details of the heart valves. How many types of valves are there? Essentially, there are two types of valves. You got the leaflet valves and you got the semilunar valves. Now, the leaflet valves are called so because they are having structures like leaves. You understand the leaves which open and close like this. If there are 3 leaves, it is called as a tricuspid valve, and if there are 2 leaves, it is called as a bicuspid valve. As you can see in the diagram that a tricuspid valve is the one that is having 3 leaves and having chordae tendrae attached on the lower side to ensure unidirectional flow of blood. Bicuspid valve has got another name. It is also called as a mitral valve. So, leaflet valves of 2 types, tricuspid and bicuspid, or also called as the mitral valve. The other type of valve are called as the semilunar valves. As you can see in the diagram that the semilunar valves are present in the aorta and in the pulmonary artery. Now, let us go into the details of the tricuspid and the bicuspid, that is the ones that are present in between the auricles and the ventricles. Another name, if you refer in some other book, the name might be, it is addressed as auriculoventricular valves or AV valves. Now, the right auricle is connected with the right ventricle, the left auricle is connected with the left ventricle, and each of them are having tricuspid and bicuspid valves respectively. I repeat once again, the right and the right ventricle have got tricuspid valve, whereas the left auricle and the left ventricle have got bicuspid valves. The importance of these valves is that it promotes unidirectional flow of blood and prevents black flow of blood. The semilunar valves which are present in the aorta are structurally different. You can imagine the leaf of a valve which is resting on a tripod like a camera. So, such valves are not having any chordae tendrae attached to them, but instead they are just having a support like this, as if a camera is resting on a tripod. So, these valves will be able to handle the pressure, yes, but again the function of these valves is to prevent the backflow of blood. Now, till now I have been referring to the flow of blood, but there are 2 auricles, 2 ventricles, a set of valves in the aorta, in the heart becomes a bit confusing. So, let us see how the flow of blood actually takes place through the heart. First thing first, to begin with, the blood, as you can see in the flow chart, is first poured into through the superior and inferior vena cava into the right atrium or the right auricle. From there, through the tricuspid valve, it enters into the right ventricle. From right ventricle, through the pulmonary valves, it will be going into the pulmonary trunk. Through the pulmonary arteries, it reaches lungs. In lungs, it gets oxygenated, and then through pulmonary veins, it will be coming into the left atrium. Through the bicuspid valve it reaches the left ventricles, and through the left ventricle through the aortic and semilunar valves it comes into the aorta, and from aorta the major arteries will be taking oxygenated blood to the entire body. Now, what does that mean? It means that the heart is having two circuits. One is the systemic circuit, where the blood is moving into the entire system of the body, and the other one is the pulmonary circuit, where the blood comes back from the circuit, that is from the system of the body, deoxygenated, loaded with carbon dioxide, comes into the heart, goes into the lungs, gets oxygenated, carbon dioxide is lost over there, again comes back into the heart. It means that any blood flow is going through the heart twice at a given time. So, these two circuits are referred as the systemic circuit and the pulmonary circuit in the heart. If you look at the diagram, here you can see that there are two different color notations for showing impure blood, that is deoxygenated, as well as pure blood, that is oxygenated. Now, friends, as I told you in the beginning of my talk, that heart is also made up of muscles. So, let us see, what do these cardiac muscles need? Do they need nutrition? Yes, they do. So, for their own nutrition and for their own oxygen supply, they have their own circulatory system called as the coronary circulation. We all know about the heart attack. What is it? It is when the coronary artery gets blocked. Besides coronary artery, there are several arteries like the circumflex artery, as you can see in the diagram, the interventricular artery, the right marginal artery, the coronary artery and its branches. Similarly, to collect the blood which is deoxygenated, there is a coronary sinus, there is a great cardiac vein, a middle cardiac vein and a smaller cardiac vein that is collecting the deoxygenated blood. All these arteries and veins will be keeping the heart healthy and nourished all the time. After all, the heart starts beating much before our birth and stops only after an individual dies. So, heart needs to be taken good care of. Now, coming back to the conducting system. Now, the conducting system, as you can see in the diagram, consists of the SA node or the sino-auricular node. Sino-auricular node is placed on the right atrium and is connected to the auriculoventricular node, which is present at the junction of auricle and ventricle. It is connected through special pathways or the thin nerves, and these nerves further will be propagating the impulse in the form of AV bundle through the interventricular septum into the entire ventricular wall. The nerves innervating the entire ventricular wall are called as the Purkinje fibers. Now, let us understand what is the importance of these conducting cells. They are responsible for the uniform contraction of heart and coordination of its functioning. After all, who tells the heart how much to beat and when to increase the heartbeat and when to decrease the heartbeat? Well, that is the beauty and speciality of this organ. It increases and decreases in its intensity on its own. It is controlled by brain, it is controlled by hormones, it is controlled by exercise and several other factors. The heartbeat increases without any rhyme or reason, or you might, if you are feeling low, your heartbeat decreases. All this control and coordination is done under the effect of hormones, and the functioning is coordinated by the sino-auricular or the SA node. So, the SA node, the AV node and the AV bundles along with the Purkinje fibers are responsible for coordinating the heartbeat and the ventricular function. Now, let us see what is this AV bundle. AV bundle is also called as the bundle of His. It is coordinating the atrial and the ventricular contractions, so that when the auricles or the atria contract, the ventricle relaxes and accommodates all the blood that is coming from the auricles. And when the ventricular contraction is occurring, the heart valves have to close and the blood has to go back either into the systemic circuit or into the pulmonary circuit. This coordination is controlled by the Purkinje fibers. The Purkinje fibers are located on the wall of ventricle and they are controlling the function. Let us sum up the entire story of heart once again. Talking about the structure of heart, as you can see in the diagram, it is consisting of the right auricle, right ventricle, left auricle and left ventricle. So, heart essentially is 4 chambered in case of mammals. If we can look at the diagram, you will be able to realize that the heart is a pumping organ that is collecting blood from different parts of the body. This is the deoxygenated blood that is collected through the superior and the inferior vena cava and is poured into the right auricle. From the right auricle, the blood flows into the right ventricle, and from there it is pumped through the pulmonary artery into the lungs. In lungs it gets oxygenated and comes back into the left auricle, and through the AV valves it will be going into the left ventricle. Left ventricle will provide a powerful contraction so that the heart is pumping the blood in different parts of the body. So, we can understand that heart is actually functioning via two circuits called as the pulmonary circuit and the systemic circuit. So, this alternates and the heart keeps on working all the time. Here what we also studied was were the different types of heart valves. There were the tricuspid and the bicuspid valves which were present in between the auricles and ventricles. These two types of valves are also called as the AV valves, and then there were the semilunar valves which were present in the aorta. Functioning of all these valves is to prevent backflow of blood, and if at all they are not able to prevent the backflow, then there is a problem because it is called as a physiological ailment. In case of a heart attack, the damage occurs to the cardiac tissue and the cardiac tissue dies, and so the ventricle is not able to have a powerful and normal functioning. So, the amount of blood that is being pumped will be affected. So, it can be said that heart is a 4 chambered structure, that is a pumping organ. In a day it is pumping around 8,000 liters of blood in a healthy individual, and it contracts and relaxes about 100,000 times. On an average, it will be contracting and relaxing 72 times a minute in a healthy individual, and overall it is continuously functioning right from our birth, in fact before our birth till an organism dies. Thank you very much.